All right. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon, at least from New York. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching from. My name is David Utrobin. I am a community development lead here at the Maker Foundation, and also a longtime community member. And I get to enjoy my Tuesday afternoons here on the community call, giving the community a big update on what's been happening in the MakerDAO universe over the last week, and kind of surfacing different interesting things that are happening. Every once in a while, I have a guest. Actually, more often than not, I've been having guests, but today we're going to keep it nice and simple. It might even be a pretty short call, but we're just going to be going through the Maker Relay episode 20. And if you don't know what Maker Relay is, it's a weekly publication that's created by a group of community members here at MakerDAO, and it covers pretty much everything you could think of: votes, um, current events, any recent updates to any of like the interfaces and stuff like that. It also features a state of the peg segment, so you get all of the really great analysis that Vishesh usually brings on the Thursday governance and risk call. You get like a brief summary of that in the Maker Relay every week, and also just general community highlights, highlights from the forum. We have like a tweet of the week. We have a bunch of really good stuff. So check that out. It's released Monday evenings, and yeah, it's totally available for feedback. If you have ideas to make it better, the team would really appreciate any suggestions. So don't be shy. And with that, I am going to actually share my screen, and we're gonna run through it. So give me just a sec. All right, and it's a pretty laid back and light day. I see only a handful of people in the call, which is totally cool. Thank you guys for coming, and I hope this is valuable. All right, cool. So let's jump right into it. So votes. This is kind of the number one thing that the typical MKR holder or voter should be thinking about week to week. What's happening in governance? And actually, at the top of Maker Relay, it links to a really great resource for any voters who want to like dig up information. These are different participation tools. They're websites that have everything from like stats, history of governance actions, visuals, like anything you could think of. There's a ton of resources here, so check it out. It's always linked at the top here in the Maker Relay if you're ever looking for it. So yeah, this week we have a couple of different things happening. So we are in the, I guess now we're entering into the second week of November, uh, which is exciting. So every month at MakerDAO there is a governance cycle, and in the November governance cycle, we have basically a number of different Maker improvement proposals up in the inclusion polls. And just to briefly explain what inclusion polls are. They are basically saying yes or no to each individual MIP or sub-proposal, and whichever ones get yes, they get bundled in to one governance poll and then one executive vote at the very end of the month. And this happens kind of week 1, week 2, week 3. So we're still in the very first stage of that, the inclusion polls, so go check those out. There's a number of really interesting ones happening. So there is an update to MIP 5. MIP 24 actually replaces MIP 5. MIP 5 was the old emergency voting system. MIP 24 revises that and builds upon the experience of dealing with emergencies over the last year, or about a year, in multi-collateral DAI specifically. But it's a huge improvement. It gives some very practical guidelines on how the community should surface any emergencies or urgent matters to, for governance facilitators to take notice. Yeah, it just gives some really general guidelines that are needed. Yeah, so check that out. There's also a Flash Mint module being being proposed. The code is there for it. Everything is pretty much there for it. So check it out. With this, users will be able to flash loan DAI directly from the Maker protocol, which is really exciting and will provide a new source of revenue to the protocol. So really sweet. There's also MIP27, the debt ceiling instant access module. This makes it a lot easier to do debt ceiling adjustments. The way they're done now is voters individually vote on, actually down here, like last week we had, 6 different votes on debt ceiling adjustments. And rather than doing this all manually, there's kind of some logic embedded in how to do debt ceiling adjustments, and we don't have to wait for the governance delay, which at the moment is 72 hours. So if we were to propose a debt ceiling adjustment, we would pretty much be able to do it as quickly with no delay whenever we want. So this is a very useful tool for governance. It helps us be more agile. There's also a new domain team being proposed. It's called the Operational Support domain, and its job is to do a few things. It's to actually, I'm not going to butcher it, but I'll kind of I'll read the paragraph summary. So the key function is to ensure the development and management of distributed operations at MakerDAO. So it's responsible for helping domain teams coordinate to complete objectives and manage shared resources. So it's going to be doing things in the realm of general operations for domain teams, cross-domain team coordination, and grants management. So the Maker Foundation grants program will basically live under the operational support domain team, and the DAO will have more control over it. Frank is asking, is that the same as the Amy Jung poll? Yeah, so this is the actual domain team being proposed, while down here there's a sub-proposal to this MIP28, and it's to onboard the domain facilitator for this domain team. And to quickly explain like the roles in domain teams, there's basically 2 roles. There's domain facilitators, which are elected by the DAO, and then there's domain contributors, and they don't have to be elected. They're just people who are helping with the domain in some way. But the domain facilitator is pretty much the owner of the team and the responsible party. And yeah, as you rightly pointed out, Frank, Amy Jung is being proposed as the domain facilitator, which is really exciting. She will make a great one, and I personally am voting yes for her. All right, cool. And then the other couple of MIPS in the inclusion polls are the calendar exception MIPS, which it's almost like a bank holidays type of thing, where basically it's saying for the month of December, the monthly governance cycle is going to be skipped. The first 2 weeks, I believe, are still going to be, like, people are still going to be around, so there is a weekly governance cycle that might be employed if there are any urgent MIPS or urgent things to pass. But on the whole, the monthly cycle is going to be skipped just due to like the massive season of holidays and all of that good stuff. So this to me is pretty much a no-brainer. Go check out the discussion and vote. And then the last one is the source cred funding. So if you've been around, specifically on the forums, you'll know that we've been running a really interesting experiment. So the Maker Foundation has been funding source cred. I think something like, I don't want to butcher it, so I kind of want to go into the discussion thread and just check it out. But I believe it's like 10,000 DAI a month. I might be wrong about that. Actually, here. So here's the final report. Let's check out the final report. Just scanning. Total cred. Sorry for not being as prepared as I should be, but you forgive me because you all love me. Haha. Okay, well, I can't see the exact number of how much we've given month to month. You know what? It's probably in the original proposal. Bear with me, bear with me. Payouts. Yeah, so I guess at the first month it started with $5,000 worth of DAI. But I think that was changed. Either way, the point, I'm kind of trailing off on the side. Basically, there was a 3-month trial period where SourceCred was implemented on the MakerDAO forums. And SourceCred is kind of this algorithm that runs behind the forums and reads user behavior. So it reads the likes that you get, the posts that you make, and there's just a bunch of really clever stuff going on behind the scenes, and it essentially assigns each person a score. And the cool thing is that, yeah, if you participate in the forums and you opt into SourceCred, you actually get paid in DAI every month. And this has had objective increases, at least in the last 3 months. As you can see, the visits are up, the topics are up, the posts are up. Of course, you can't attribute all of this to SourceCred alone, but I'm sure that incentivizing forum activity has certainly helped surface good ideas, attract interesting people to actually look at what we're doing and participate. And all in all, I'll actually try to see if I can get them on to talk about the final report in one of these upcoming community calls. But it's a really, really interesting project. It's worked really well. And I believe it's a really, really great way that, to basically compensate and reward the community for the work that they've been doing in the forums. And so, yeah. So the MIP actually proposes that Maker Governance intends to fund the use of SourceCred within the Maker community to incentivize effective governance. And I highly recommend you check out this MIP, check out the project. It's really, really fascinating stuff. SourceCred definitely rocks. Yeah, Frank. So I'm actually gonna reach out to Ben after this call, and I'm gonna see if he is interested in doing like a full review of the final report, because it definitely should get some eyes on it. Should get some coverage. It's a really exciting thing that's happened in our community over the last few months. So yeah, totally. And so yeah, those are all of the MIPS and sub-proposals up for the inclusion polls. So pretty, I would say like there's not a lot of contentious or like highly debated MIPS in this month's cycle, so that's pretty exciting. Well, actually, I guess that's like the opposite of exciting. It's like pretty boring, but it's good because there's less of a risk that all of this stuff won't pass and it won't have to wait until January. So that's good. So besides the inclusion polls, there's a couple of other governance polls. One is related to actually because of the recent flash loan incident, there has been kind of a formal vote, kind of how do you say the word, gauging the community's sentiment around burning borrowed attacking MKR. So the idea is if somebody borrows MKR from Aave and Balancer and a million other places and like attacks the protocol with like a malicious governance action, on redeployment, should we burn that MKR, even though it's not technically the attacker's, the attacker just borrowed it for like a block or two, right? And the discussion has been really interesting. I haven't followed it super duper closely. Like I read it pretty much last week when it was like halfway. It's 14 days old. I read it, basically at its half life. But Long for Wisdom puts together some pros and cons around the issue, and clearly there was a bunch of participation from people in the forums. As you could see, 49 voters. 67% of which said they agree with the above statement, that in the event of a malicious governance attack that leads to redeployment of the Maker protocol, prior to the introduction of flash loan guards into the governance process, the community and domain teams should do everything possible to burn the MKR involved in the attack, regardless of whether the owner was directly involved in the attack. And this has implications because if you're a casual MKR holder and you are supplying your MKR on a balancer as a liquidity provider or Aave, basically you are assuming the risk that if somebody borrows your MKR and like screws up the Maker protocol, and attacks it, you're on the hook. In a sense, like this is a very kind of, it makes sense. It kind of sucks because you can't like get the return that you want on your MKR, and it's but you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're lending out your MKR, you are lending out your vote. And that's the whole point of MKR. MKR is a governance token. It does have value for that reason, that it has power. People can actually affect change with it. And so with holding MKR comes great responsibility. And hopefully in the future, when there's the governance contract redesign and more interesting stuff happening around voter incentives, it's going to be like kind of a no-brainer to like hold on to your MKR and even participate in governance, rather than lending it out on one of the DeFi platforms today. But either way, this is a really kind of interesting topic of discussion because it's like, hey, I didn't do the flash loan, but you were the enabler. So it's definitely challenging. And also, Lewis rightfully points out it might create a problem for the person who borrows on the platform, Aave Balancer. Yeah, absolutely. Might even yeah, it's interesting because I guess on a redeployment, what would happen is it wouldn't be the same MKR ERC20. I assume that the protocol would be redeployed and almost like a duplicate MKR type token would pop up with it, and basically, I don't know if it's like an airdrop is the right term to use, but something like that where you'd be able to redeem or get credited to you based on how much MKR you have. And if they see that you have like MKR and Aave, they're just gonna skip over you and say, yeah, we're not gonna airdrop you the new MKR. You're gonna be stuck with the old the old system that you contributed to its downfall, right? Like a staking system. What do you mean, Lewis? So I think I get the root of the question, but basically, if the protocol is attacked, an emergency shutdown happens, the protocol has to be redeployed and started from scratch, basically. And so in that event, a new MKR token would have to be created. So Brian mentions this would be difficult to enforce technically. Difficult, yes. Impossible? Who knows? I would think not, right? Like, I mean, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, but they're definitely in the redeployment. There would be like the technical ability to kind of pick and choose who gets the new MKR, right? Yeah, I'll put you on. Yeah, you're right. Hey, what's up, man?
Good to see you.
Likewise.
So I haven't commented on this post, but like, it's still not quite clear. Like every time that the system went to emergency shutdown, like we would have to evaluate how it got redeployed afterwards, right? So like, we might end up in a situation where Maker gets rapidly inflated to the point where there's like hundreds of millions of them. And so like one thing that we could do is just issue one for one against other people's balances.
Right.
That that would like automatically wipe out anybody in Uniswap or Balancer. And that might not be the intention, depending on how it went down, right?
Right.
The other option would be to do like an upgrade, like the old Maker,
Mm-hmm.
like Maker V1, and then just pass it through a contract, kind of like we had with Decide to Die.
Right.
That's where it becomes a little harder to like decide that we're just going to burn that Maker, right? Because like
Right. Right.
that's the beauty of the system we're in. Like it's permissionless. Like there's no
I guess on the like migration contract you can like add like a blacklist and just like blacklist certain addresses, but that's so easy to
right, but you can
circumvent,
transfer
right?
it, right?
Yeah,
You can transfer it to
exactly.
another address, and then
Exactly.
I mean, it's
It's
depending
very
on your
hard.
perspective, it's a beautiful system, but it also like
Right,
makes it
right,
hard to do things like that. So
right. What about a snapshotting method where perhaps before MKR is even inflated, like you go to like right when the attack happened that led to the downfall, you just kind of take it from there and selectively like drop the new MKR to people
yeah, you could
in
do
that
that
mapping. Yeah.
for sure. But at the same time, like that would effectively wipe out anybody that had their maker in Uniswap, because if you airdrop
Mm,
new maker to that Uniswap contract, like there's no way to get that
yeah.
out. It's effectively locked. So that
Is there a way to get around that by like digging into like LP addresses and balances and just like basically having a
I suppose
workaround?
you could probably do that, like script it
Yeah.
up and run a
Yeah.
run something to see who the original owners were. But even
Right.
then, the original owners may have been Dharma or something, some other
Right. Right.
uh, contract that can't access them if we send it to them.
Right.
So
Somebody who's
it's gonna be
custodying user funds or something like that.
ES is messy. So yeah, I
Yeah.
encourage all maker holders to vote responsibly, and let's not do that.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. I mean, the ideal situation is that emergency shutdown never happens. The protocol doesn't go through a governance attack, and everything is gravy forever. Like that's what I am betting on. I'm long that scenario, like 95-5. You know, but as we all know,
Yeah,
reality is
we have to think
reality.
about it. So
Yeah, countermeasures and having a plan is really important. And
but yeah, an actual post ES maker distribution would be kind of ad hoc. It would be like whatever the new deployment necessitated. Like because
right,
we can't predict. There are several ways it could we
right,
could get to
right,
that situation, and
right.
unfortunately, it's hard to predict ahead
And
of time.
that speaks to the responsibility of MKR holders because like you know if you are an MKR holder, it's in your interest to not let people have control over your MKR to attack the system. Like it's kind of intuitive, right? It's kind of pretty straightforward. But of course, yeah, you want to earn that return. I mean, let me ask you, Brian, while you're here, what do you think about incentivizing MKR voters? Like doing like I know Kurt talked a little bit about it last week. I'm
I
curious
have
your
to,
thoughts.
yeah. I'm with the foundation. I have like
Of
things that I
course,
can and can't say, but
of
my
course.
personal opinion is that we should be incentivizing vault holders, because right they're the ones that have a lot to lose, but they also they're trying to leverage up their own positions. So
Right,
a vault holder who's locking up ETH has a big stake in the system, but they also don't necessarily have Maker. Um,
right.
and like Compound gives comp tokens to the
So
people who are
something like
actually
a
using the
rebate,
system.
yeah. Yeah.
And then yeah, I mean, YFI has their own program for rewarding voters.
Right, right,
That's another option. Like these are all in the hands of the community. We um, as the foundation really can't
right.
um, introduce or
I
propose
think
these on
the
our own.
I
So
think the original argument against voter incentivization is that it would like create a lot of noise in that people would vote just to get the incentives and like they wouldn't really pay attention or like give mind to what they're voting on. Do you have any strong like do you feel that that's like conceptually more or less right? Uh, do
I mean, that's the perpetual balance, right? You got low
right.
information voters who are just voting,
Yeah.
because of a get out the vote campaign, and
Yeah.
the people um, who know what they want. But the people who have a higher stake are going to have a higher vote too. So
Totally. Totally.
um,
And there's the whole piece about like I hate the term protocol politicians, but basically having like MakerDAO protocol executives, so to speak, but people who vote on your behalf that you can, allocate
I'd love
your
to see
vote
that,
to.
right? Like I would.
I'm excited for that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty close to the system, so but
Yeah.
if I wasn't, I would love to just delegate my uni or whatever, because I
Totally.
don't want to spend all day looking at the
Totally.
system. And I'm sure, Maker's got its own Maker holders that are in the same boat. So,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
I got another call, so thanks for putting
Do
me on.
your thing.
Um,
This was a really good short bit.
all right, later.
Later. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, so there's clearly a lot to think about, to dig in here. So highly recommend anybody who's in the community, even outside of the community, to look into this. Share your opinions on this. Um, you know, the more thought goes into it, the more likely good solution is going to come out, right? So yeah, so that's one of the other polls, and then the last poll that I'm going to talk about that's happening is the stablecoin action plan. So this relates to basically what's been happening over the last year, where the DAI peg has been shooting up due to exploding demand caused primarily by yield farming and a number of other things, but uh, the point is that DAI went from being primarily backed by Ethereum to now being backed by a ton of stablecoins, right? So here I am on DAI stats. There's 960 million DAI. 350 million is coming from ETH. Uh, let's ignore the other stuff, but there's 400 million coming from USDCA. There's 56 million coming from TUSD. There's 21 million coming from PAX-A, which is another stablecoin. Uh, and yeah, you could see that stablecoins are really dominating the underlying their share of the underlying collateral portfolio. Uh, and uh, and this was allowed to happen basically to help keep the peg in line. Uh, and of course, the community wants to bring back a balance and kind of help wean the system off of stablecoins. And so, let me close this. And so there's kind of a few different options for the community to take, right? Uh, first option is do nothing. Well, actually, you know what? Let me go to the vote because if you're a voter and you're just going through the voting portal, it's all explained here, so you could check it out here. So here are the options. Do nothing. Stability fee remains at 4% for stablecoins. The surplus buffer is not increased as a result of this issue. So I'll dig into that. Actually, I'll read all the options and then I'll kind of explain from there. Option 1A. Stability fees remain at 4% on stablecoins, and the surplus buffer is increased to prevent the burning of MKR until the issue is resolved. Option 1B. Stability fees are lowered, remain above 0%, and the surplus buffer is increased to prevent the burning of MKR until the issue is resolved. And I'll tell you guys what the issue is in a second. Option 2 is stability fees are lowered for stablecoin vault types, with the goal of setting them to 0% as vaults approach 100% collateralization ratio. And then option 3, stability fees and debt ceilings are lowered to 0 for existing stablecoin vault types. New stablecoin vault types are created with a 4% stability fee. So, so let me kind of explain what's going on. So with USDCA, the collateralization ratio is 101%, meaning it's very, very easy to get a ton of leverage with not a lot of starting capital on these vaults. And the reason for this is to open up the ability to arb the peg down. And the problem with this tactic is that with a 4% stability fee and 101% collateralization ratio, it doesn't take a long time before a lot of these vaults are underwater. That they're under 100% collateralization ratio individually, right? And the challenge here is that uh, the liquidations are turned off for this. This is a ton of money, right? 400 million DAI in USDC, backed by 411 million USDC. That's a pretty small margin there. It's only a few million. And so at a certain point, this entire facility, the USDC8 facility, is gonna get to about 100% or below 100%. And I'm sure some vaults are already under collateralized. And this, of course, is a problem because the DAI that is produced by them is not fully backed. And the protocol has to cover that loss if at the time of liquidation. So the idea is, okay, we can put stability fees down to 0, and basically that keeps that turns off the fees and the positions stay intact, and that gives the chance for these position owners to even unwind in the future if the peg goes down, and they could complete their ARB. Likewise, if we're continuing to collect fees on this, it's kind of hard because you're only really collecting 1%, and then the 3% is you're just running the clock down quicker. So there's a really good case to be made for lowering the stability fee anyway. But yeah, so man, I'm kind of butchering the explanation, but I hope this is kind of making sense. So the idea is this: with this facility almost being tapped out, the debt ceiling would be set to 0. No new positions would be able to open. The stability fee would be set to 0, and this would be kind of frozen. And the protocol can liquidate at its own discretion in its own timeline and have a lot of control over these positions. At the same time, a USDC-C facility would be created because there's already a USDC-B that basically has the same parameters: 101% collateralization ratio, a 4% stability fee, and would allow a new cohort of people to ARB the peg down and to do the same strategy. So yeah, that's kind of option 3 here, right? Stability fees are lowered and a new stablecoin vault type is created. So these are kind of just slowing down, but not giving people an option to continue doing this. Whereas this is cutting off the last cohort that is slowly getting into the red zone, and opening it up for future people to do kind of the similar strategy. So of course there's a ton of discussion around this. Don't take this single explanation from me as as a means by which you should make your own decision about this. I highly suggest you read through the discussion thread, read through the Maker Chat governance and risk channel specifically. There's a ton of stuff in there. Sam M wrote a ton about this. There's a ton of really interesting comments here. Yeah. So check it out. In general, though, the one thing I would advise against is actually keeping the situation going as is and doing nothing is probably not a good idea. The least we could do is lower the stability fee so that these don't run underwater as quickly. And if we do that, I would also recommend just making sure new people can't open positions here. But anyway, yeah, read through it. I hope that made a little bit of sense. Made sense to me, but I know I could have explained it a bit better. Yeah, so check it out. Definitely a really important piece of Maker history is how we actually handle the situation. All right, so yeah, I shouldn't be too hard on myself. I'm like a perfectionist, Akiva. It's terrible. All right, so that's the votes for this week. Here are some of the votes from last week. We had an executive vote that passed on November 8th, and it's actually going to be executed tomorrow on November 11th. And we're going to be having 2 new vault types. So we're going to be having YFI-A and BAL-A. And yeah, these are kind of have been a long time in the making, and it's exciting to see 2 of DeFi's pretty much top collaterals or assets, I don't know what you want to call them, be accepted as collateral into Maker. So it's really exciting. All the teams did their work. Smart contracts team did the smart contract stuff, the Oracle's team did the Oracle stuff, and the risk team did the risk stuff. So it's really great. In addition to onboarding these two new vault types, there was also a number of debt ceiling adjustments and stability fee adjustments. For actually, I guess I could click through here and kind of just show you guys what's going on. So the ETH debt ceiling is being reduced from 540 to 490. That's obviously due to a lack of demand for the ETH vault type, so it's just a risk measure. The ETH debt ceiling is also being reduced from 20 to 10. The Mana A debt ceiling is being reduced from 1 million to 250,000. That's because of actually the lack of liquidity in Mana markets, and it's also just as a risk measure, in addition to the fact that the vault's not really being used that much. USDT Tether A is being proposed, well, it is being lowered from 10 million to 2.5 million. WBTC is being actually increased from 120 million to 160 million. Link is being increased from 5 million to 10 million. And the only stability fee that's changing is the ETHB stability fee from 6% to 4%. And this comes as a pretty much a recommendation from Premotion, the risk team, saying that the ETHB vault type hasn't really produced a lot of DAI, and it's suspected that it's because of the fact that the stability fee is a little bit too high compared to similar market rates. And just as a reminder, the difference between ETHB and ETH is that for ETH you have 150% collateralization requirement, whereas on ETHB, I believe it's 125%, if I'm not mistaken. So you can get more leverage on ETHB, but with, of course, more leverage comes more risk premium. So if you want more leverage, you got to pay the piper. All right. Yeah, so that's the executive vote that passed, that will be executed tomorrow. And it passed with almost 90,000 MKR, rounding up, of course, with 27 unique voters. Not the most amazing turnout, but a good turnout nevertheless. And yeah, these are last week's debt ceiling adjustment polls that converted into this executive vote. So all of that happened. It's all yeses across the board. All right, some updates from Mips. Charles posted his weekly MIP update on Wednesday last week. So check that out if you want like the full update. But we have a number of MIPs in the request for comment phase. One of them is the weekly actual debt ceiling adjustments. This defines an automated process for weekly debt ceiling adjustments. This is different than the instant access module for debt ceiling adjustments. This is kind of like the logic, whereas the instant access module is just the ability to do it without a governance delay, if I'm not mistaken. MIP 26 is also in request for comments. I know that the team was trying hard to get it in for November, but in light of a bunch of stuff, it's still not ready, and it's definitely a really, really big deal. So the DSS Gov is the governance contract redesign. It is a replacement of DS Chief, and it's going to come with improved security, obviously like protection against flash loans, better functionality for MKR voters. There's really just a ton of really great stuff packed in here, so check it out. I know Derek Fossman did a couple presentations about it. Also, just, yeah, it can be understated. This forum thread is really just packed with information, so dig in. There's a couple of sub-proposals in the request for comment phase. This one is really exciting. It's a declaration of intent for a potential domain team called Governance Communications. And this team actually is responsible for a number of things that a lot of the community sees week to week. So to name a few, Maker Relay is one of them. Governance call snippets, which Anna creates every Thursday. Governance call summaries, which we have a whole team of people creating them week to week. We have a dedicated MKR Gov Twitter that is being worked on, and we have a potential podcast in the works, which is exciting. And and actually recently has been looking for feedback from the community. So yeah, so the idea behind this team is exactly that. MakerDAO needs a system of communications between the DAO, the DeFi community, and the public. Uh, and this team of community members is basically the ones to do it. And I'm not gonna dig in much deeper than that. I might even have Tim and perhaps a couple people from the team come on the community call and talk about the GovComms team. It's a really exciting thing that I think is totally a necessary piece to DAO life. So if you have any questions about them, feel free to ask. And likewise, if you're interested in contributing to anything that they're doing, feel free to reach out to me. I'll happily put you in touch with them. And then the last sub-proposal in the RFC phase is the Maker protocol cover with Nexus Mutual. So it's a declaration of intent. Basically, let me just read it. So Maker governance wishes to engage Nexus Mutual to provide cover for the Maker protocol. So we're getting insurance. That's like the simplified thing to say, but you could check out all of the details. It's a pretty thought through declaration of intent. Of course, the declaration of intent is exactly that. It's a declaration of intent, so it doesn't mean that we are, if this passes, it's 100% going to happen. There still has to be a MIP. There still has to be a ton more stuff kind of fleshed out. But this is just the first step. If the Maker voters are interested in this, they should vote yes. If not, they should vote no. All right, cool. So some quick updates from smart contracts. The GSM pause delay has been increased to 72 hours, meaning if a vote passes, that affects the change in the system. It will only come into effect in 72 hours, and this is in order to be able to stop a potential malicious governance action that might harm the system. In addition, the authorization for the Oracle Freeze module and the liquidation circuit breaker have been removed. So they used to function like instant access modules where it wouldn't have to go through the delay period, but now they don't. They don't have the ability to just bypass the delay period. This is a temporary measure, because of the whole flash loan incident from a couple weeks ago. And yeah, the domain team is working to get a proposal to get these modules back in place. So stay tuned for that. The smart contracts team also did a couple of technical assessments. So they did the technical assessment for a couple of LP tokens in Uniswap, so DAI ETH and USDC ETH. So it's exciting to potentially have these as collateral in the MakerDAO in the Maker protocol soon. For risk, there is a really interesting stuff happening around real-world assets. Matthew Rabinowitz of Success Capital actually has a MIP passed and also has a declaration of intent passed, and there's a bunch of there's a ton of detail here that I feel I shouldn't unpack now. I'm actually gonna kind of study through it and make sure that I can really present it well to you, or if not me, even might have Matthew come on the call. Um, but yeah, real world assets are cool, and the stuff Success Capital is doing is really cool. So read through all these resources if you're interested in digging into it yourself. So yeah, some current events. So new portal. There's a new governance portal. If you haven't seen it, actually, I'll do a quick show off right now. But yeah, it's really great. You could do there's just a ton of new features. You could do executive vote comments. Like there's people. Oh, that's pretty funny actually. I didn't see that yet. Yeah, so you can leave your comments if you're a voter on executive proposals. There's a feature request to have this available on polling as well, so that might be coming soon. And in addition, you can actually batch your governance poll votes now. So you can vote on 9 governance polls in one transaction, which is a really, really huge user experience improvement for MKR voters. It also helps you save on gas, so that's really great. Why is this here? All right. Yeah, so that's the new governance portal. So if you're a voter and you've been seeing it, yeah, it's been really great. And likewise, actually, yeah, I guess I'll show you guys the demo here, but there. Oh, that's super small. Never mind. So there is a really cool feature called on-chain effects. So in executive proposals, you can click on this tab here called on-chain effects, and it'll show you like precisely what is being changed to what. So this is a really great accountability measure. It's really great in general. And I think that they're going to be working on making this more readable. So if you don't know what an ilk is, if you don't know what a war, if you're confused with all this Taiwanese, don't worry because this is going to become more readable over time. So yeah, stay tuned for that. All right, coming up on it, state of the peg. DAI is, of course, still hovering at around $1.01 with periodic dips below. This is relatively good. It's stable. We're at almost a billion DAI, so 957 million. I think it's like 960 or something right now. If you want the individual numbers, I'm not going to read through all of them, but feel free to check them out on DAI Stats. And then likewise on MakerBurn, there's a really easy breakdown here, and it's all like sorted by amount, so it's pretty cool. Moving forward. Actually, really quick. I also want to give an update on the surplus buffer. So recently, the surplus buffer was increased from 2 million to 4 million, and since then, we've accumulated an additional 1 and almost a quarter million DAI. So we're coming up on the surplus buffer. I would say probably over the course of the next 2 weeks, we'll probably hit it at this rate. So yeah, just want you to be cognizant of that if you are an MKR voter. And so, yeah, here's the 7-day DAI volume weighted average price. As you could see, very very classic bell curve shape, right at around $1.01. Yeah, it's like $1.01 right there. Yeah. The volume across at least these markets here listed on the right is around 236 million over the course of the last week. Yeah, ETH vaults collateralization is significantly above 200%, which is good from a risk perspective. I think this is actually my favorite visual. So this is like the liquidation price of all the different vaults, and as you can see, there's kind of these are the most risky ones from 400 to 320, I guess, and then at 320, there's just a huge amount of DAI sitting there. Yeah. And just as a note, like these are living numbers, so these fluctuate all the time. If ETH were to start like really hard crashing today, of course, vault owners would respond. I imagine this wall might become more granular, might get pushed up to lower liquidation prices. Who knows? But either way, it's looking pretty good from a risk perspective. All right, so let's kind of wrap this up. We're coming up towards the end of the call. Just a bunch of community highlights. There is an altcoin buzz article about DAI growth in Q3. There's a Sandbase Insights article about the top 10 busiest ERC20 projects. MakerDAO is number 5 at the time of posting. And then a really important question was asked. So recently, ETH 2.0 was announced to be launching, and people are wondering what's going to happen to MakerDAO, what's going to happen to ETH locked in, CDPs, and I found that the top level comment here was actually pretty on point. So in phases 0 to 1, nothing will happen because 2.0 will effectively be separate from the current chain. In phase 1.5, the current chain will be picked up like a potted plant and carefully replanted into Ethereum 2.0, so the chain will not change and your CDP will not change. Nothing about the chain state changes. The only thing that changes is the soil it's growing in. Really great analogy there. So yeah, basically you don't have to worry. ETH 2.0 was made with ETH 1.0 in mind. And so, yeah, if there's any changes to that, I will be the first to let you know if you regularly attend this Tuesday call. All right, cool. Some videos we had. Just wanted to highlight last week's community call. The conversation that Kurt and I had was really fascinating. We talked about the flash loan incident and a number of other related topics around it. So definitely check that out if you weren't here last week. We also had a FriDAI brunch meetup that happened this week, and it talked about stories, from the glass ceiling, and it talked about basically making it as a female in the space and like stories of success and achievements and yeah, just growing the gender diversity in the space and stuff like that. So check it out. It was a really great meetup from what I heard. Maker Forum deep dive. Yeah, I already mentioned a little bit about this top one. Governance forgets about whales. Planet X outlines the reason everyone's vote counts with the MKR protocol, and it does. It definitely counts, especially with the recent flash loan thing. DAI holder snapshot polls. Monet Supply added some active polls to the snapshot voting portal to play with DAI voting. This is, I believe, a just for fun thing. Yeah, he's like playing around with the snapshot methodology that a lot of people, like a lot of protocols in space, are using. Like Balancer, I believe, is using the same snapshotting methodology. So yeah, check it out if you want to play around with it. The tweet of the week, Sketchfab version of the Maker HQ in Decentraland. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, a lot of interesting things happening. So yeah, we got about 3 minutes. I'm kind of gonna leave it off there. There's a number of different meetings and events happening every week at MakerDAO, so definitely check these out. There's also a list of community events happening over the course of this next week. There's a DeFi Madrid hackathon happening towards the end of the month. And likewise, yeah, give us some feedback on the Maker Relay, how we can make it better for you, how we can make it more digestible. If you see any typos or anything like that, definitely appreciate a shout out. We'll fix them. And with that, I'm going to end it like a couple minutes early. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and I hope you have a good one. Oh yeah, and Maker Relay is also in Spanish, so check it out. Lewis does a great job translating it every week. Oh yeah, and no option to migrate users to a new vault type. No, there was no conversation. I haven't seen a conversation about migrating the USDC-A into the USDC-C vault types. As far as I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere. So I don't think it's gonna have that functionality out from the start. All right, cool. Take care, everybody.